It sure makes for a relaxing, stress-free college football weekend when you're a fan of the number one team in the land and they're on a bye week. Now, I hate bye weeks for my team like everybody else does. I mean, I appreciate bye weeks. I understand you need bye weeks. I'm glad we have bye weeks. But when that week actually comes around, it does suck not being able to watch your team play. And this is the time of the season, really, where you have a lot of bye weeks spread out. You know, a lot of teams have bye weeks this time of year because we're sort of rounding the curve towards the second half of the season here. Really, last third of the season coming up here. But anyway, week 8 of the college football season in the books, and it was another great weekend, wasn't it? Now, heading into this weekend, there was a few storylines. Number one, what a terrible slate of games. No ranked versus ranked games this week. You had a lot of highly ranked teams playing really bad teams. No real intriguing matchups. And you had some ranked teams that were actually underdogs to ranked teams. So you had sort of those storylines going. And now the storyline on Sunday is what it seems to be anyway, where, you know, if you look at the boob tube or listen to college sports radio or whatever, oh man, we thought this was going to be the worst weekend and it was amazing. It was better than we thought it would be. I don't know if amazing is the right word, though. This weekend of college football, to me, really was only good compared to what its expectations were. We thought it was just going to be horrible, and we ended up having some exciting things happen, which, of course, we'll talk about in this edition of the Your Season Is Over video, which we do every Sunday morning during the season right here on LouTube. We laughed at the losers. We talk about some teams that won that looked bad, talk about some teams that won but looked good. I'll tell you who I think the favorites or the front runners or the top 5 or whatever you want to call it for the Heisman should be right now at this point in the season. And I'll give you a list of who I think the best teams are in no particular order. But it's time to start with the losers. And we'll talk about some of these games and the 9 overtimes and the upsets and all that as we start to go through these games here. But we've got a pretty impressive list of losers today. I don't know where y'all want to start. Here. Let's just grab this one. What in the world is going on with Dabo Swinney and the Taters? And, you know, I've been watching college football a long time. Put you back up here, buddy. You know, because you ain't going over there anytime this season. Top 10 shelf. You know, Dabo Swinney gave an interview on Friday. I think it was to Todd Blackledge. It was somebody at ESPN. And Dabo Swinney said, you know, we still can make the playoffs. What? Now, this was before they lost this weekend. Clemson didn't have a chance to make the playoffs before. I don't know what Dabo Swinney's routine, to me, has been old for quite some time. I think it's really starting to wear on the majority of college football fans at this point, including some Clemson fans. Not that any Clemson fan wants Dabo Swinney fired, and I don't think they should. This is clearly a terrible year for Clemson. You know, the offense has just been absolutely horrible. From the opening snap of the season to the last snap of the game yesterday, I have seen zero improvement from Clemson offensively. And that is worrisome when there's talent there. For whatever reason, it's not showing up on the field on Saturday. They were sort of falling back on their defense early in the season. Now they've got some key players over there that have got hurt. And Clemson is just, as far as today, heading into the last week of October, Clemson is, forget great. They're not even a good team. They're lost in the wilderness right now. And as soon as they came out of their bye week 2 weeks ago and played Syracuse, a game they barely won, I said, well, that's it. If they weren't able to improve anything offensively, make any changes, whatever, during the bye week, they still look this bad against Syracuse. All hope is gone, and they proved it right when they came out yesterday and laid another egg against Pitt. Shout out to Pitt, who, you know, played a good game. Kenny Pickett is the real deal. Great quarterback. He'll be one of the first quarterbacks taken in the NFL draft next year. And he lit Clemson up from start to finish and broke the ACC, moved into 4th place, I guess it was, all-time passing in the ACC this weekend. And guess who he passed? Our boy Sunshine. That's right, he passed Trevor Lawrence for, I believe, 4th on the all-time ACC passing list. So congratulations to Pitt and Kenny Pickett. But Clemson is just an absolute mess. They finally did bench the ukulele, which even Clemson fans have been scratching their head going, where is Puma-chan, where's the backup? I mean, this ukulele is just awful. Something has happened to ukulele. I know there's a joke. Georgia broke Clemson, broke the ukulele, broke Clemson's offense. Some of that might be true to some degree, but there's really something off with the ukulele this year. When you watch him in the pocket, any type of pressure at all, and he just completely loses all focus, attention. He just looks like he's never seen a football before. To be honest with you, maybe we'll talk about this a little bit. Bryce Young looks kind of that way. When Tennessee got pressure on Bryce Young yesterday, he was not good. Most of the big plays Alabama hit were with clean pockets when Tennessee didn't have any pressure. But anyway, Clemson's in the toilet. Their season has been over. Dabo Swinney got mad yesterday after the game because the media asked him about any possible coaching changes. I don't see how Dabo Swinney cannot make some coaching changes at the end of this year. Now, he said yesterday, I know my staff. I support my staff. If he doesn't make some changes to that staff and his personal philosophy, then this won't be the only bad year Clemson has. His philosophy on the transfer portal is backwards. His philosophy on name, image, and likeness is backwards. And if he wants to stick with this staff, particularly this offensive staff, I don't know that Clemson can get back to the very top of the college football world next year like some think they can. Because like I said, they do have talent. They're going to have another good recruiting class this year. They have a pretty good coaching staff, especially defensively. But if they don't make some major changes offensively, it's going to be hard, I think, for Clemson to even win the ACC next year. So regardless of what Dabo said yesterday to the media, I do expect major, almost wholesale changes offensively to the staff and to Dabo's philosophy, in particular in regards to the transfer portal. Who else? This team never left Columbia yesterday. Were they losing 44-0 before scoring some garbage points towards the end of the game? Oh, my God. This game was absolutely brutal. Texas A&M just absolutely drugged them up and down the field for 4 quarters. It looked like a war crime, what happened to the Gamecock yesterday. The game wasn't worth watching. You know what was worth watching? Carolina Jackpot's live stream of the game. I've been telling people as long as they listen, Carolina Jackpot, if you don't know who that is, it's a YouTuber. Just search for him, Carolina Jackpot. He's the most entertaining college football reaction guy there is. This guy, and now he's live streaming some of the South Carolina games, so you don't have to wait till the game is over to get his reaction afterwards. You get his reaction in real time. His stream was hilarious and way better than the game. Honestly, his stream was probably better than any game I watched yesterday. This dude went to sleep in the second half of his stream, kept streaming while he slept and snored, woke up, kept the stream going, ordered a pizza, ate the pizza, and then went right back to drinking. All on live stream during the game, and he was hooting and hollering and ranting and raving the whole time. The guy's very entertaining. But South Carolina, old Frank Beamer don't know what he's doing. South Carolina has gotten worse almost every single week this year. Go back and watch some of South Carolina's first couple of games. They looked better then than they look now. That is concerning, even if you're the most optimistic of South Carolina fan. You know, I do think South Carolina's got a talent deficiency, and I do understand first-year head coach, brand new coaching staff, probably not going to be very good. Never been a head coach before, learning on the go, that kind of thing. But what you do expect is some improvement in some areas over the course of the season, and South Carolina appears to be going in reverse. And that's hard to do, especially when you start out pretty bad. You know, usually the worse of a team you inherit, the easier it is to improve that team. Think about it. If you inherit a Kansas, an Arizona, a South Carolina, whatever, somebody that wins 1, 2, 3 4 games a year, it's not that hard to get that team to 5 or 6 wins, and you're a hero, right? You inherit a team that is winning 8, 9, 10 games a year. It's hard to improve that. It's a lot easier to go from 1, 2, 3 wins a year to 4, 5, or 6 wins a year than it is to go from 8, 9, or 10 wins a year to 11, 12, 13, or more wins per year. He appears to be going in reverse, Frank Beamer. I remember. You got to remember. Remember back, I know it's Shane Beamer, okay? The South Carolina fans get extremely pissed off when I refer to their head coach as Frank Beamer. So I don't know if it's going to work out there with Frank Beamer. We'll have to keep an eye on that and see. But South Carolina is just an abject failure when it comes to football and has been as long as I can remember. They haven't won a conference title since 1969, and that was an ACC title. Miami fans, Google that. Google ACC title. I know y'all Miami fans don't know what an ACC title is. Google ACC title, Miami fans. You'll figure out what it is. We asked if they could win one for the Gipper. The answer is a resounding no. The answer is a resounding no. They can't win one for the Gipper. They got destroyed by Ole Miss. And Ole Miss, man, I haven't. I'm recording this video before the new AP and the new coaches poll come out today, Sunday morning. I wouldn't be surprised if Ole Miss is somewhere in or very close to the top 10 this week. I know they lost to Alabama 42-21, but that's still their only loss. And they're starting to accumulate some decent wins. I mean, they beat Arkansas. They got some tough ones coming up. But sitting on that one loss and that offense, when that offense gets going, it is fun to watch. I don't like Lane Kiffin, but I like Matt Corral. I'm a Matt Corral fan. You guys know me if you've been around for a while. Yes, Georgia's my favorite team, but I'm a fan of college football, and I love great college football players. I love exciting college football players. Matt Corral is fun to watch because he may be the best passer in college football, and he can run for 100 yards a game if you need him to. That is a rare combination. You see a lot of really athletic quarterbacks that can run around, but maybe they struggle to throw the ball or they struggle with accuracy or whatever the case. And you see a lot of guys that can throw the ball really well, but struggle to move around. Matt Corral does both at a very high level. And when he's clicking and that offense is clicking, it makes it very hard to defend. And he's fun to watch. So, yeah, Ole Miss putting Ed Orgeron out to pasture there with a beatdown of biblical proportions yesterday. Anytime you lose to Miami, you're going on the your season is over list. So NC State, we can put you back up here. Remember when NC State was creeping up near the top 10, top 15? Now they've lost a couple of games. People forget they exist. But yes, if you lose to this year's version of the Miami Hurricanes, you deserve to be on a your season is over list. In fact, if you lose to any major Florida program this year, Florida, Florida State, or Miami, you deserve to be on the your season is over list. Those three teams are horrible. Florida State, Miami, and Florida. Florida and Florida State play at the end of the year. Miami and Florida State play in a couple of weeks. And Florida State rolled yesterday. I know it was UMass, but if you watched Florida State at the beginning of the season, you probably weren't all that sure how the UMass game would turn out. Florida State ended up whipping them, but Miami comes from behind, beats NC State 31-30, I think it was. And Miami might have found a quarterback. Enough of this De'Aaron King, all hype. He's all hat, no cattle. The other guy, Garcia, that they thought was going to be all world, he's benched with a foot injury. So they put this guy in that really no one's ever heard of outside of Miami fans. This Van Dyke played pretty good last week in a loss and played good enough yesterday to get a win against a decent NC State team. NC State was ranked. They were in the top 25. I'm not trying to pretend they were elite. But again, this is Miami we're talking about. They're an absolute dumpster fire of a team and of a program. This is a good win for Miami. So NC State, your season is over, which everybody in the ACCs has now been featured on the your season is over list, except Wake Forest. Wake Forest, Wake Forest. Are we ever going to have you in a your season is over video? More on Wake Forest when we get to the bad wins coming up in a second. No one really laughs at Coastal Carolina, do they? No. They don't even have a spot on the shelf. They go down on here on the floor with other podumps like BYU. But Coastal Carolina was undefeated. I don't think Coastal Carolina is nearly as good this year as they were last year. And where I have been ranking Coastal Carolina in my top 25 has reflected that. I think Coastal Carolina was getting kind of a bump because of what they did last year. But they got beat by an average App State team. It was on Wednesday of this week, wasn't it? Weird Wednesday game. And I know we see weird things happen in Wednesday games, but results have consequences. You lost. It was your first loss to the year. I have a Coastal Carolina helmet for no particular reason. So I said, well, might as well put them on the your season is over list. So thanks for trying this year, Coastal Carolina. But you ain't Cincinnati, are you? No, you're not. Now, besides being one of, if not the ugliest helmets I have, yes, believe it or not, this is an Oklahoma State helmet. Oklahoma State was undefeated. Not anymore. Lost to Iowa State. And this was one of the most talked about games of the week because Oklahoma State was ranked 8, I believe, in the AP poll. Iowa State was unranked, yet Iowa State was a 7-point favorite. And it did end up being a great game. And Oklahoma State hung around and gave it everything they had. And this wasn't a situation where Oklahoma State came out flat or, you get the feeling if these two teams played 10 times, they might go 5-5. It was one of the better games yesterday, I thought. But Oklahoma State did come out on the losing end. So they'll be falling out of the top 10 in all the polls this week, I'm sure. Oklahoma State still has a pretty good team. I don't know that there's any great teams in the Big 12, including you, Oklahoma. And yes, we're going to talk all about Oklahoma before this video ends. But Oklahoma State, you were undefeated. You're not anymore. So your season is over. Of course, no one can win at Iowa State, so you shouldn't feel bad. What else do we got? Oh, what about this? How did this happen? Now, I know Sean Clifford wasn't 100%. You're off the top 10 shelf, but you're not going back over there either, I have a feeling. Let's slide you in right here for now. Make room for you right there in the Big 10. You're not going back on the top 10 shelf. That was your second loss. Of course, you lost to Iowa. I gave you the benefit of the doubt. A lot of people gave you the benefit of the doubt with that loss to Iowa because you were up big when Sean Clifford went out, and you ended up losing with a backup quarterback in the second half. But this team you lost to yesterday is not good, Illinois. Not a good team at all. And Sean Clifford played in this game. I know he probably wasn't 100%, but look, if the guy's not ready to play, don't play him. So I don't want to hear, well, Sean Clifford played, but he wasn't 100%. That's why we lost. If he's not ready to play, don't play him. Georgia's ranked number 1 in America and 7-0 and is infinitely better than every other team in college football. And our starting quarterback never plays. We haven't been back up all year, so I got no sympathy for that. But you lost to Illinois, first-year head coach Brett Bielema. And this was the 9-overtime game. And this was the first game I'd seen where really the new overtime rules were on display. Used to be in overtime, you got the ball at the 25-yard line. And if you scored, you'd kick an extra point or go for 2. And then once it got to the third overtime, you had to go for 2. Now, they quit all that. The first possession you get at the 25. If you score, you can kick an extra point or go for 2. If you don't score, you can kick a field goal or go for it on 4th down. Then the other team gets the ball. You guys know the deal. So first overtime, each team kicked a field goal. We then went 8 more overtimes. These people couldn't score a 2-point conversion. Not from the 25 and scoring a touchdown and then it's no. That's not how it works. You get the ball on the 3-yard line now, starting in the second overtime. For those of you that didn't know the rule change or didn't see the game yesterday. Starting in the second overtime, you don't get the ball on the 25-yard line. You get the ball on the 3-yard line, and you get one play to score. If you scored, it counted as a 2-point conversion, and they give you 2 points. So the score was, 16-16 after the first overtime when each team kicked a field goal. Between the second and the 9th overtime, the final score was 20-18. They went 8. They each went like 7 plays in a row, unable to score, gain 3 yards. It's like 7 in a row. They couldn't get a damn 3-point conversion. It was hard to watch. I mean, the offense was offensive in that overtime period. Unbelievable. And then Illinois does finally score. Penn State went for to the 9th or whatever. 9th overtime, didn't get it, or 8th, whatever it was. Illinois comes out, throws a touchdown pass in the back of the end zone or a 2-point conversion pass in the back of the end zone. Game over. They win 20-18 or 18-16, whatever it was. I think it was 20-18. So that means Penn State had 8 plays from the 3-yard line and scored once out of 8 plays. And Illinois only scored twice, but 2 is more than 1. God, Penn State, that was offensive. Offensive. And let me say this about James Franklin, and I take no pride in this because I've been tooting his horn for a while. And if I live to be 1,000 years old, I'll still think what he did at Vandy was impressive, getting them to 9 wins. That is a biblical miracle. He is an overrated coach now. He loses way too many of these kind of games that he's got no business losing. So Southern Cal, LSU, whatever job openings may open up and James Franklin is getting mentioned or considered, I would run away from that. James Franklin, his reputation is exceeding his reality right now. He's not a great coach. Not a great coach. There is no excuse for Penn State losing to Illinois. None. And the fact that it went to overtime really just makes it worse. It just makes it worse. You had 9 overtime periods in which to try to beat Illinois on a battle of 3-yard plays, and you couldn't do it. This is Penn State, the Big Ten. They're supposed to be a physical conference, and there are some physical teams in the Big Ten. But my God, it's 5, 6, 7 times in a row you can't get 3 yards. It was just pitiful and painful to watch. Penn State seemed unprepared. They didn't seem excited or ready to play this game. I get it that it's Illinois, but my God, this is... And again, this has been a pattern with James Franklin at Penn State, and I have been a huge James Franklin fan. And like I said, I still think what he did at Vanderbilt was remarkable, and he's had some good years at Penn State, but the consistency just hasn't been there. It just hasn't been there. Blowing the huge lead at Iowa, and I get it, like I said, that Clifford went out, but there are some teams who've been playing a backup quarterback 90% of the season and are 7-0 and ranked number 1 in America. Never mind giving up a lead because you had to play one for one half. And Illinois is just not a good team. They're not a good team, and they beat Penn State. And the way they beat them with the overtime, and Penn State had all them opportunities to get 3 yards, couldn't do it. It's pitiful. Your season is over. Now, we still got some good games coming up in the Big Ten East. You have Penn State, Ohio State, Michigan State. Aren't both of those next weekend? So we'll see. Penn State could play spoiler. I mean, technically, Penn State could still win the Big Ten East by winning out because they would beat all the teams ahead of them. But still, then you need more help, and all that's going to do is screw the Big Ten out of a playoff spot. I mean, I don't know. Michigan and Michigan State are still undefeated. Penn State's got 2 losses, both in conference. Ohio State's got 1 loss out of conference. How did you lose to Oregon? Maybe we'll talk about that in a second. Last and also least, Tennessee and our good buddies from French's Mustard. Put you back up here. I have to slide you back because we got to make room for your good buddy, Mr. Mustard. There you go. Peas in a pod. Tennessee and French's Mustard. Tennessee got humiliated in the fourth quarter by Alabama. Tennessee played pretty good in the first 3 quarters of this game. I don't know what was going on with Alabama in the first half. They looked out of rhythm, out of sync. Bryce Young appeared not to have it all together in the first half of that game. And like I mentioned earlier, when Tennessee was able to get pressure on Bryce Young, he did not play well. You know what it reminded me of? It reminded me of the 2018 Georgia versus Bama game. That was the Tua season, the one where Tua played the whole season and Jalen Hurts was the backup. Bryce Young in this game against Tennessee reminded me of Tua in the first half of that game against Georgia. Georgia was living in the backfield in that game. Tua really had not been pressured much that entire season, and Georgia pressured him in the first half of that game, and he couldn't complete a pass. Now, I know they put Jalen Hurts in and came back and won the game, and the Bama fans can remind me about that, but doesn't have anything to do with the point I'm making. That's what Bryce Young looked like in the first half of this game yesterday. He just looked out of sorts. Alabama, of course, had the weird turnover where Jamison Williams, is that his name, basically just dropped the ball on the ground. I mean, it was sort of punched out from behind. So Tennessee, give Tennessee some credit. They hung in with, Alabama for 2.5 quarters. They were down 21-14 at halftime. Each team came out in the third quarter and scored a touchdown and a field goal. So each team scored 10 points, whatever it was. So it was then, 31-24. And then Tennessee just couldn't score again. Alabama ran away with it, scoring all those touchdowns in the fourth quarter. And it was over. Tennessee's 15th straight loss to Alabama. Tennessee now improves to, is it 3-33? 3-33. Tennessee is in the last 12 years against its 3 biggest rivals, Georgia, Florida, and Bama. No wins in that time period over Bama. 1 win over Florida, 2 wins over Georgia. 3-33 in the last 12 years. God almighty. Is Tennessee better than we thought they would be this year? It's an interesting debate to have. Their record may end up being what a lot of people thought it would be, which is 6-6 or 7-5. I do think they're better offensively, though, than some people thought they would be. And I think you have to give credit to Josh Heupel for that, because there is not a lot of talent on either side of the ball. Not a lot of talent on offense. Now, they brought in basically every transfer quarterback they could convince to come there. Joe Milton, Hendon Hooker, Harrison Bailey's riding the bench. He'll be in the transfer portal in December. Joe Milton didn't play well. Hendon Ho has played better than Joe Milton. Don't know that I would say Hendon Ho has played great, but he's a big improvement over what they had last year in Garandudu and what they had at the start of this season, which was Joe Milton. It turns out Michigan knew what they were doing by putting Joe Milton on the bench. Tennessee's defense, I think, is still pretty bad. They did manage to get pressure on Bryce Young, like I mentioned in the first half of that game, and rattle him a little bit. But just over the course of the season, I've not been all that impressed with Tennessee's defense, and that continued yesterday. Alabama, I thought, played well. Like I said, especially in the second half and then the fourth quarter of that game. And a lot of what happened in the fourth quarter of that Tennessee game, it's not just excuses that Tennessee fans are making. Attrition. I mean, they just wore out. Tennessee, what do they have, 70 scholarship players? You're allowed to have 85, but because they had all those players transfer out, there was no way to make up the difference. So about 70 scholarship players. And we're at the end of October, so like every other team in America, Tennessee also is battling injuries, so you got players out because of that. And where that really shows is in the fourth quarter, right? Your more talented teams, your deeper teams are able to rotate players in and out, not just in the fourth quarter, but over the course of the entire game, so that even your starters are more fresh in the fourth quarter than a less talented or less deep team like Tennessee. And that showed yesterday. Alabama, of course, recruits at the top every single year, going back 12, 13 years now. So they are just loaded with talent, first, second, third string, no matter how deep you want to go on Alabama's roster. It's talented. And so, teams like that are able to rotate players in and out are able to stay fresher longer and perform better in the fourth quarter. And so there is some truth to that. I'm not taking away the big win from Alabama. I mean, the reality is they won, 52-24. That's a blowout. Doesn't matter whether, 30 of those points were scored in the fourth quarter or the first quarter or anywhere in between. The final score is what counts. So I'm not taking anything away from Bama. More or less, I'm just giving the Tennessee fans permission to use the excuse that they're using, which is, we wore out in the fourth quarter. That obviously was true if you were watching that game. Tennessee was just out of juice in that game. Players will wore out for the reasons we just talked about, depth or lack of depth. Is that something that Tennessee can fix? Well, not this season, right? Can they fix it next year? Probably can't get to 85 next year either. It's probably going to take a couple of years for Tennessee to build its roster up. And having 85 scholarship players isn't going to fix the problem. Having quality players is what will fix the problem, right? So you need a couple of years of good recruiting classes at Tennessee if you're going to compete with the best of the best in college football. And right now, that's your Alabamas, your Georgias, if you're talking about just the SEC. And then, the rest of the teams that, you guys know. Clemson with the exception of this year. Ohio State, Oklahoma, blah, 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 down the list every far you want to go. You need depth, and you need good depth, and that can't be coached. Depth can't be coached. Whatever you think about Josh Heupel, and I think he's gotten probably just about the most out of this Tennessee offense that you're able to get from what's there. You can't coach depth. You have to recruit depth, and because of the recruiting limitations and how many players you can sign and all this kind of stuff a year, you can't just show up as head coach of a team and go, we've only got 70 players, let me go out and sign 15 more. Doesn't work that way. There are caps and limitations, and Tennessee is going to have to work around those caps and limitations for the next several years until they can build this roster back up to the 85 scholarship players. And again, it won't be enough to just have 85. You got to have the quality. You got to have quality depth. And that's, I think, at this point, one of the biggest unknowns about Josh Heupel. If you talk to former Oklahoma, or if you talk to Oklahoma fans, who were fans when Josh Heupel was coaching there, they're not high on Josh Heupel's ability or eagerness when it comes to recruiting. Now, that can change over the course of a coach's career, and we'll see what he does at Tennessee. And it's not like the head coach is the only one going out recruiting. Let's be real. Every coach on the staff is recruiting. But that's really going to be the key for Tennessee, and it almost doesn't matter who the coach is, right? It's going to come down to recruiting at Tennessee. Can they start getting the big name players out of a state like Georgia, like they did for so many years? Can they go to Florida and get some kids? There's some players in Tennessee every year, obviously Division I quality players. There's not enough players high school wise in the state of Tennessee where you can say, well, let's just focus on Tennessee and build our team that way. They're going to have to go outside to get some guys, to get some kids, to get some players. And that, more than anything else, I think, is what is going to determine sort of the next 4 to 5 years of Tennessee football. Because no matter how good Josh Heupel is, if you don't have players in college football, you're just not going to win games. You're just not. Talent is going to win out in college football most of the time. Not all the time. You'll see you'll see a Penn State lose to an Illinois. You'll see Georgia lose to South Carolina a couple of years ago. Alabama lost to Texas A&M a couple of weeks ago. Alabama's more talented than Texas A&M. But generally, over the course of a season, you're going to win more games with talent than you're going to lose, right? Not that coaching doesn't matter, but the recruiting is very important. So that'll be, in my opinion, if you're a Tennessee fan and you're happy with what Josh Heupel has been able to get out of the team this season, and I have a feeling most Tennessee fans are, then I think the next thing you need to look for is recruiting. And we're coming up on signing day in December, early signing day, and then the final signing period, first week of February. And we'll see where Tennessee lands sort of within the hierarchy of the SEC. But there's some big boys at the top of that recruiting list every year. Your Georgias, your Alabamas, Texas A&M, LSU, Florida, 10 to 15-ish usually. So we'll see where Tennessee can land, because that's usually a pretty good indicator of where you're going to fall in the pecking order within the SEC. It's not 100% accurate, but generally speaking, the teams that recruit the best are going to play the best on Saturdays. It's just how it goes in college football. It's just how it goes in college football. But there it is. This week's list of losers. What else can we talk about today? Oh, I know what it is y'all want to talk about today. I know what else. Who won yesterday but looked like hot doo-doo? Who do we need to add to the government cheese line? These people won and didn't look good. Cincinnati. Boy, you disappointed me. I bet Cincinnati every week because they're a covering machine. Not going to go 12-0 against the spread this year, though, Cincy. Nope. You beat Navy, but only 27-20. Navy's a one-win team, Jack. Not very good. And this is a problem for Cincinnati because, unfortunately, there are teams out there that can get away with a close win maybe against a bad team in terms of the playoff, when it comes to the playoff committee, because your entire body of work will be strong enough to cover up sort of that, 27-20 win over Navy. I don't know that Cincinnati's resume will be strong enough overall to overcome very many games like this one. Cincinnati's got to be beating teams and blowing them out. Now, they got a couple of opportunities left this year for what I think would be quality wins. And again, you can tell me, oh, that team ain't no good. The committee values ranked wins. They've got to win over Notre Dame. Notre Dame won again yesterday against Southern Cal. They need Notre Dame to keep winning, obviously. Cincinnati does. The better Notre Dame does, the better that win looks for Cincinnati. What else does Cincinnati need? Well, they need Alabama to lose in the SEC championship game to Georgia. And it might need Oregon to lose a game, too. More on that in a minute. Cincinnati's got a game coming up against SMU in a few weeks. Say what you want about SMU. They're ranked in every poll. They'll be ranked in a playoff poll. If Cincinnati beats them and beats them handily, that's a game the committee will look at and go, that's a quality win. It doesn't matter what you think about SMU with the whole, they ain't played nobody. If it's a ranked win, the playoff committee is going to consider that a quality win. And Cincinnati may have an opportunity to play them twice because of a conference championship game. So we'll see. But that was not impressive yesterday by Cincinnati. You know what else wasn't impressive? Oklahoma. Oklahoma is just waiting to lose. This was Kansas. We can joke about Tennessee and Florida State and Miami. There ain't a program in America worse over the last 15 years than Kansas. This was embarrassing. Shut out in the first half. Now, this is what really blows your mind. You're used to seeing Oklahoma get bad wins where the score is 40-38, and you're like, well, the offense, it looked great, but damn defense can't tackle nobody. 0 points scored against Kansas in the first half. Oklahoma, a team that relies on its offense to win games because they have no defense, not good. Oklahoma's defense continues to look like an absolute disaster every single week, week in and week out. And yesterday, the offense just completely let you down in the first half of that game. Now, you ended up winning 35-23. No one is impressed. And you know who wants Oklahoma to keep winning? Well, obviously, Oklahoma fans want Oklahoma to keep winning. But other than Oklahoma fans, do you know who wants Oklahoma to keep winning, go 12-0, and win the Big 12 at 13-0? Georgia fans, Bama fans, Ohio State fans, Cincinnati fans, Michigan State fans, Oregon fans, whoever you want to name, any playoff contending team. Any and every playoff contending team, their second favorite team is Oklahoma. Because they want to play Oklahoma in the playoffs because you're not going to win. Oklahoma is an absolute... Oklahoma is not a playoff quality team. Because of reputation, name brand, name recognition, and the fact that they've been there so many times, they may end up getting in at 13-0. They're not one of the best 4 teams in America today. And no matter what happens the rest of the season, they won't be one of the best 4 teams when they pick the playoff teams. But the committee may put them in, and I'm a Georgia fan. I pray to God Oklahoma gets in. It's like a bye week. If you get matched up against Oklahoma in a first-round playoff game, it's the closest thing we have to a bye week in the playoffs right now in college football. Oklahoma is absolutely terrible. Just terrible. Oregon, another team that keeps trying to lose. Played their best game of the year week 2 against Ohio State and beat them on the road at Ohio State, and they haven't lost a game since then. You know what else they haven't done since then? Impress me 1 iota. Not at all. 0. Oregon, again, please. Oregon, please go 12-1. Please go 12-1 with a Pac-12 title. And playoff committee, please put Oregon in the playoffs. Please put Oregon in the playoffs. They're right behind Oklahoma on the list of teams that people can't wait to play in the playoffs because it's pretty much a guaranteed win. Oregon, not an impressive team. This goes back to last year, too. They're the most talented team in the Pac-12. They're probably they got one of the best coaches in the Pac-12. The rest of the Pac-12 is down. And just like last year, Oregon just can't take it to the next level. They play just good enough to beat bad teams. Beat UCLA by 3 yesterday. And UCLA could have won that game. A late interception in that game. Hell, Kansas could have won the Oklahoma game, too. Here's what I want to know. Go back to the Tennessee-Ole Miss game 2 weeks ago. Not this past weekend, not this weekend, but the weekend before. The play where Ole Miss snapped the ball and Matt Corral didn't do anything. He just stood there like he thought the play was dead. Tennessee ran up to him, hit him, ball fell on the ground. Tennessee picked it up, ran for a defensive touchdown. Referee said, no. Play was over. He wasn't doing any forward progress or whatever the case. Play was over. Now go to yesterday and look at the Oklahoma-Kansas game. I believe it was Caleb Williams runs the ball on some kind of a quarterback draw. He's stopped. He's actually moving backwards. Then at one point there's like 2 seconds where he's not moving at all. There's just a pile of people. It's not moving at all. Literally for 2 or 3 seconds. The referees don't blow the whistle. Kansas gives up, thinking the play is over. Caleb Williams pops out the backside of the hole and falls forward for a first down, and they give it to him, saying his forward progress was never stopped. How do you square those 2 things? It's just there's no consistency in college football. What were we talking about? Oregon not being any good. Wake Forest 70-56 against Army. I didn't know Army scored 56 points in a season with that slow it down offense they have. Now, Wake Forest, offensively, they lit it up, but Jesus, you gave up 56 points to a service academy. Won 70-56. Congratulations, though. You're the only undefeated team in the former Power 5 conference known as the ACC. Yeah, I said former because there's not enough power in the ACC to justify the Power 5 tag at this point. Clemson, Miami, Florida State, hot doo-doo. Justin Fuentes should be out of a job at the end of this year. Just absolutely pitiful. Lost to Syracuse. Syracuse hadn't won a ACC game in how long? I mean, since forever and a day. Anyway, so those teams won and looked bad. You got some teams that won and looked good, though. SMU, mentioned them earlier. Again, you can cry about the who they played deal. Point is, they're undefeated, and they won 55-26. I think it's a good win for Bama because they obviously came out flat in that game. Tennessee came out ready to roll. Bama somehow managed to keep the lead in the first half and then pulled away in the fourth. So I'm giving Bama a credit for a good win there. Ohio State keeps rolling along, 54-7 over Indiana. Ohio State does look good when you watch them play. No doubt about it. Way better than they did at the beginning of the season. The quarterback looks good. I'm still not completely sold on the defense. And you say, what, it held Indiana to 7 points? Yes, that's true. I'm still not completely sold on the defense. Cry about it. I don't know what else to tell you. And it's going to be real interesting to see what happens if Oregon finishes the season 12-1 with a Pac-12 title and Ohio State finishes the season 12-1 with a Big Ten title. How do you put Ohio State in and leave Oregon out in that scenario if you're the playoff committee? They each have one loss, but Oregon not only beat Ohio State, but beat Ohio State in Columbus. And I know I'm the first to admit Ohio State's a better team today and would likely beat Oregon, but that shouldn't be how things work. You can't replay games because you're better a month later. Oregon won. That's going to be interesting to see what happens if that's the way it ends up. If that's the way it ends up going. And Ohio State's got some tough games coming up: Penn State, Michigan State, and Michigan coming up those 3 games to close out the season here for Ohio State. So we'll see if they can make it through. They already got one loss, so no margin for error for the Sucknuts. Michigan 33-7. They won again yesterday over Northwestern. Northwestern not very good, but 33-7. Not as impressive as Ohio State 54-7, but Michigan is undefeated. They keep rolling along. They play Michigan State this week. Notre Dame 31-16 over Southern Cal. Southern Cal's been disappointing yet again, as evidenced by the fact that their coach got fired in week 2. But when you look at Notre Dame, this is one of the most impressive wins they've had because they had a lot of close calls against bad teams. They had a close call against Florida State. Close call against, was it Toledo? Lost to Cincinnati by 2 touchdowns. Barely beat Virginia Tech, something like 32-29 or something weird like that. And Virginia Tech's just mushed doo-doo. So this is probably Notre Dame's most impressive win so far of the season. Miami with a big win, 31-30 over NC State. Talked about that enough already during the NC State Your Season Is Over portion of the video. But shout out to the Miami fans. Y'all have had it rough this year yet again. This was a pretty impressive win to me, especially considering everything going on with Miami right now. San Diego State is undefeated. My God, how's that possible? I don't know. They beat Air Force, though. Pitt beat the Taters. That's impressive. Good win, Pitt, man. You beat the Taters. Clemson's a shell of their former self. What a shame. Dabo Swinney, good boy. Supply and demand. Supply and demand. Price of Kleenex through the roof. Through the roof. What is this? University of Texas at San Antonio is undefeated. 45-16 over Latte. UTSA keeps on rolling. Florida State 59-3. Jesus over UMass. Syracuse over Virginia Tech 41-36. Those are pretty good wins. How about a Heisman list? Here you go. This is the definitive Heisman list here. In fact, I'll bet you. Oh, stop with the Caleb Williams for Heisman. First of all, ain't nobody getting the Heisman that didn't start till week 6 or 7. So just stop with that right now. Caleb Williams is not winning the Heisman. Plus, he looked like doo-doo in the first half against something called Kansas. He doesn't even deserve to be on any Heisman list. You can't play half the season and win the Heisman. Stop with that. Kenny Pickett, Bryce Young, Matt Corral, Bijan Robinson, running back at Texas, Kenneth Walker, running back at Michigan State, and my man, Jordan Davis. That's your top 6 for the Heisman right now. No, Jordan Davis is not winning the Heisman. It's just fun to put a fat defensive lineman on the Heisman list, isn't it? Everybody loves to do that. Everybody loves it when defensive linemen score touchdowns, when they line them up at tight end or whatever. It's just funny to see defensive linemen do things. So, Jordan Davis, you're on UNCLELOU's Heisman list. Who's the best teams? Well, UGA's the best team. Alabama and Ohio State, to me, right now, look like 2 and 3 as far as the second and third best teams. Argue on the order, whatever you want. Georgia is the clear number 1 and best team in college football today. Now, we'll see what happens as the season goes along. But then I think Alabama and Ohio State are right there. If Alabama plays its best football, I think they're capable of beating Georgia. Alabama hasn't played its best football very often this season. Ohio State, they're there. They're close there with Bama. Let's just leave it at that. Michigan, as long as they're undefeated, I think you got to consider Michigan, Michigan State, Oklahoma, Cincinnati. Oklahoma and Cincinnati could both get left out of the playoffs, even though I think right now they're both in the top 4. We'll see. Oklahoma just looks absolutely horrible. Anyway, there it is. Your season is over. I love these Sunday videos. Love these Sunday videos. I need to order me a couple more helmets too. What am I missing here? Oh, I don't have either Virginia team. I don't have Virginia or Virginia Tech. I don't have Utah. I might order me a couple of helmets today. Have a good morning.